Guys, my next guest has had multiple lives. He's a former model, fashion photographer, but you know him best as the judge on America's Next Top Model. Nigel Barker sits down with me and he's making drinks. Nigel Barker, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
So what are you up to these days? You live in New York?
I live in Woodstock, actually, upstate New York. Moved there pre-pandemic, 2017. Fell in love with Woodstock. Had been traveling up there actually since I first came to New York. A roommate of mine back in the mid-90s first introduced me. He's an artist. His name is Ford Krull, and he just said, look, you got to come up to Woodstock and hang out. And I kind of had an early love affair with Woodstock, and I never kind of forgot it. And you know, my wife and I, with the kids and everything, had just been traveling up there just for weekends. And 2013 we bought the place. In 2017 we moved the whole family there.
You have a beautiful family.
Thank you.
How did you and your wife meet?
We met many, many moons ago, 1994. She was 19, I was 22. Our sort of joint agent at the time, I was modeling back then, so and she was a model. He was from Milan. His name is Alan Piazzi. He's a great friend of mine. He actually lives in Anguilla now and has a restaurant business, completely different. But he said to me, he's like, I've met these two girls, because my wife is an identical twin, and said that you are going to love them, and you've got to meet them. I'm going to bring them from Miami, they were at UM at the time, and bring him to Milan. And when that happens, you've got to come over. So a few months later, he says, they're coming to town. He gets me a job at the same time. And literally, he says they're going to be at the agency at this hour, and he match made us. And I walked in and saw my wife, her identical twin, Kimmy, and I was like, wow, these beautiful girls, but their personalities were really what won me over. And I had literally the worst pickup line of all time. I saw them and I'm like, I don't know what it was, but normally I had great pickup lines.
Yeah.
In fact, I kind of was, I think of myself back then as a bit of a player, to be honest. But I was clearly not on that day. And I walked up and I said, you know, I pulled up my sleeve of my shirt, and revealed these disgusting, hugely swollen mosquito bites that were sort of oozing a white liquid and looked like little volcanoes on my arms. And I'm like, the mosquitoes are really bad this time of year. You got to be really careful. Are you new here? Chrissy, who's now my wife, literally looked at me and was like, oh, honey, I'm from Alabama. You know, in Alabama, the crocodiles have, aren't as bad as the mosquitoes. That's nothing. And we literally kind of like, I immediately was like, wow, this girl's so sweet. She's so kind. And I asked her too, afterwards, what was it about that moment that you didn't think, who is this loser? And how and you weren't grossed out by me? And she's like, well, actually, I thought you were kind of sweet. I did think it was a really bad pickup line, but I also knew that maybe you weren't pretentious then.
Yeah.
So you never know, guys. Sometimes the worst lines can be the best lines.
And how long have you guys been married now?
We have been married for 25 years. We got married in 1999. And we have been together for 31.
That's amazing. And she's kind of the reason why you got into photography, right?
She is the reason, pretty much. Her and her sister. I mean, I was, the reality is that I had been a model since late 80s. And, I like to joke that, back when hair was in fashion, nowadays, clearly things have changed and moved on. But I used to have a really long hair.
Really?
Thick, kind of long Fabio style hair. For those of you who know Fabio is, he's...
Yeah, of course.
So, because even that might be dating myself. And I just was like, I could see that the industry was changing. This was the mid-90s, and it was heroin chic, grunge, and I just knew that was not me. And so I knew that I had to make a shift. And yet I didn't want to throw away my years of modeling experience and my world in the fashion industry. And I loved photography. I always had done. I'd learned to print when I was at high school. My biology teacher taught me how to print and stuff. And I'm like, I can see these photographers, they can have a career long into their 60s, 70s. In fact, it never ends, really, because you're behind the camera and you can be creative. And, I was so kind of like wowed by my wife and her twin sister that I literally started photographing them. And they became my muses. And now it's been, as you said, 31 years I've photographed the same two women their entire lives since I've known them since they were 18. And it's
Wow.
very, very unusual for a photographer to have the same person to photograph on a regular basis for even 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So you see a real metamorphosis in my early work with them to now. But that's what got me going. I don't know that I would ever have necessarily taken up photography in the same way. I might have gone on to do something completely different.
And being a model gives you that perspective too, having been a model.
Yeah, it gave me empathy with the subjects. I mean, in fact, my early career started with me asking my wife and her sister and then their friends to sort of come back from work after doing a modeling job. Don't wipe off the makeup, don't change the hair. All that had been done by professionals. And I didn't have access to those types of people when I was just a young photographer, and certainly not at the caliber that they were being done. And sometimes they would come back with this crazy makeup from amazing hairstyles, from crazy shoots, and I got to photograph them. Obviously, I didn't have the clothes, but back then, clothes were optional. So, I created quite a portfolio of great hair and makeup, but it showcased my work in a great way, and I got to do that in Milan and in Paris, and I moved all over the country and all over the world doing that, and became known as one of the best test photographers, which means you test models for their portfolios, back in the mid-90s, working for some of the biggest agencies. And it was from that I got a break with Click Models, doing a creative concept called Click Silver. I shot the entire agency, all their models, and I painted them silver from head to toe. And then we printed it on metal and on metallic reflective material, and did a show in New York City in '96. And that was the first time that I got a big job, and I got recognition, and Paper Magazine asked me to shoot a big editorial, and it was really, I was off to the races, and it was just a really good, lucky start.
That's incredible. My sister and I have been watching America's Next Top Model for years and years and years. Just an incredible show. How did you get onto that show?
It was really by luck. Me, just like everybody, really, back when it started season 1, I watched along with everyone else at home, thought it was hilarious, thought it was brilliant. I knew a couple of people who were on it, specifically a guy called Nole Marin, who was one of the stylists and actually ended up being a judge on Top Model. And, he had said to me, season 2, they're looking to audition for photographers for different episodes. Would you be interested in being one of the photographers? And I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. What a fun opportunity to be on TV, and my mum would love it, and whatever. And I kind of did the audition. They said they would get back to me in a week or so and let me know, and I just never heard back. And I thought, oh well. I'm like, it was a little let down. My bubble was a little burst. I'm I thought I maybe could get on an episode, because it seemed like it went really well.
Well, what did the audition entail?
I actually had to go to Jay Manuel's house, and the executive producer, Anthony Dominici, was there. And they put me on camera, and they asked me to critique a magazine.
Okay.
So I flicked through, I think it was a Harper's Bazaar or something like that, and I went through each page, and I made comments about what I thought the picture would look like, the hair, the makeup, the styling, all the things, pros, cons, negatives, because I'd seen the show a little bit, so I kind of got the idea.
They wanted to see your judging capabilities.
Yeah, like how I would comment, what would my commentary be like.
Yeah.
And I was very sort of to the point and what have you, and we had some fun, and I thought it went well. They were all happy with it. And then I'm like, okay, well, I didn't hear anything. But 6 weeks later, or maybe even longer, I got a call at my studio in New York, and one of my assistants picked up the phone and said, I think it's that TV show you did. And I was like, okay. And I spoke to them and like, look, really sorry we didn't get back to you sooner, but we're about to start shooting in a couple of weeks. And actually your tape went to the very top at CBS, and which was the network that owned the UPN and the CW back then. And, they were like, well, would you like to be a permanent judge and a photographer for the entire season, every episode? And to be honest, I had no idea what that even meant. Because I really wasn't, from TV. I'd worked done a few TV spots as a model, but never like that. And I was like, well, I kind of thought to myself, it's a bit of a dice roll. It seems obvious now, because obviously with hindsight, but I knew the fashion industry wouldn't be happy, because I just worked so hard to get some sort of to the point where I was at in my career. And actually being on TV was considered to be quite commercial. And, you don't want to look like a sellout. And you were going to be doing stuff that wasn't strictly fashion. And I knew that I would be criticized, you know.
You're putting yourself out there in a huge way.
But at the same time, I also knew that what an incredible opportunity. How else do I get to be in front of everybody all over the country, potentially all over the world, and for them to know me by name and to see my work and for me to talk to them about my work and about what I do and who I am. And I knew, so I thought, well, and I could tell there was a sort of change and a shift at that time. I could just feel it, like the world was changing. Like this was before social media, guys. So you realize it really was like, we were one of the first TV shows. In fact, I think we were the first TV show to ever shoot with a digital camera, all this stuff. So it was very, very new.
Yeah, you were pioneering on so many different levels.
Many levels, yeah.
What was it like being on that show?
Oh, it was great. It was really great. I loved it. I mean, Chrissy, my wife, actually became my makeup artist, and we didn't have kids when we started, so we just traveled around the world together, and it was fantastic. She was a part of the sort of top model family with me and what have you. When we started having kids, we brought them with us. And I got photographs of Jack and Tyra hanging out together, and just my son actually said his first words with Twiggy, if you can believe that, and I was like, what are you talking about, Twiggy? And she's like,
that's pretty iconic.
Yeah, no, I know he doesn't even really understand even what that even means to this day, but at the time it was hilarious. It was special. I mean, we spent a long time, when you do 2 seasons a year and you do 18 seasons basically, or 17, I was there from season 2 to season 18. It's a good part of your life. It's a chunk of your life. And still, I think one of the most amazing things is meeting people who come up to me and were like, I grew up on America's Next Top Model. You were my Wednesday night with my girlfriends, with my mother, with my sisters, with my family. And you made me think that I could be a model. You made me think that this could happen. And even young photographers, I took up photography because of watching that show.
What was it like around the world? I mean, when you traveled, you must have seen the fanfare of being such a popular show.
It became a behemoth. I mean, we were the #1 exported television show out of the United States when we were about season 8. We had an audience of over 100 million people globally. We were in 150 countries, and we were bigger than Sesame Street and Baywatch.
What?
Right, so it was a huge, huge phenomenon. We were everywhere. In fact, there were times when I was in the Philippines, for example, where I was doing a book signing and I had 500 books and over 10,000 people showed up. They shut the freeway down for me and had a cop car front and back and had me escorted down a bare freeway with no cars on it. I was in town and they had put pictures of me all the way down the high street on banners.
Wow.
I felt like I was like the Beatles arriving.
A rock star.
It was crazy, yeah.
That's pretty incredible. What was one of the most shocking things that you'd seen or witnessed on that show? Because I feel like the commentary really made the show, and what you said about each model, that is kind of what everyone remembers.
I mean, there's a lot of shocking things. I mean, as far as like fun, crazy, outlandish stuff that happened, but I think some of the most exciting stuff is some of the stuff that people really hardly ever saw on TV. I mean, one of the things that happened to me specifically was on a photo shoot that I did in Barcelona, and we were in the crazy Colosseum, one of the oldest bullfighting Colosseums in the world, 1,000 years old, you can imagine. And I was photographing the bull that was meant to be charging the girls down, but I was trying to capture photos of the bull prior to the actual charging down situation. We actually photographed them on air with the bull hanging out in there with them, but by that point I had tired it out. And how I tired it out was by photographing it beforehand. But I wasn't getting the shot that I wanted, and I had 3 bullfighters in the ring with me. All the cameras were on the outside, and the bullfighters were telling me to get up and run as the bull charged the camera, and we would all get up, and I would run behind a screen, and then this bull would go smack into the screen, and it would shudder, and all this dust would come down. And you realize that if the bull hit you, you could be killed.
Yeah.
And then finally, for the very last one, they're like, okay, the bull's getting really tired now. This is the last time you have an opportunity to photograph it before you're going to have to change to do something else. So I'm like, okay, it's getting more tired, but at the same time, I'm not really getting the shot because I'm having to get up and move before the bull's really close enough. I think I can stay a bit longer because they're being a bit protective over me. And so when they said, okay, Mr. Barker, get up, I just carried on shooting. And then my assistant grabbed the camera and just took it out of my hands and ran. And when he did that, I suddenly realized the bull was almost on top of me. And I kind of stood straight up, turned to my side, and the bull went straight past me, and its horn hit my back, scraped me across my back, cutting me, slicing my shirt open and missing my kidneys by about basically millimeters. Otherwise, I could have been dead pretty much. And it just plowed into this wall behind me. And everyone jumped in. The matadors got the bull. We had medics there. I mean, I was fine, but I was shaken up. But I felt like I had let down the bullfighters. And these bullfighters, 3 of them got around me and they looked at me and they said, "Mr. Barker, you have the heart of a bull." And they gave me a hug and they're like, "You could be one of us." And I was like, "I'm so sorry." I was trying to say sorry for like disobeying their rules, but they actually thought it was really cool that I had the guts to stay in the ring with a bull charging me down.
Gosh.
Everyone else thought I was nuts, by the way. But that didn't make it onto Top Model. Can you imagine?
I can't. That would have been incredible if it was.
I know. I think they were scared from a legal perspective.
I swear, you're like the most interesting man alive. All of these stories that you've got are just so wild.
That's
I
funny.
mean, it's
Thank
quite
you.
a journey when you look back at it. You know, it's quite
No,
incredible.
I've been very lucky. I mean, it's a fun career to be in fashion, to work with extraordinary people, to work with designers, creatives. You know, I really think that one of the things when I look back at how lucky I've been is that I've got to work with so many other people who are talented, and I think that that's what's contagious, is that you get inspired by everybody and everything. And you know, when you're working with people who are putting their hardest work in making and creating incredible clothing, incredible hairstyles, amazing makeup, models who become muses who can transform and they obviously add their own personality in the way they move to the photographs and everything else, that it becomes sort of sky's the limit. And you know, I kind of in many ways looked at people like Cindy Crawford too from a business perspective, because of how they, you know, she's done everything from creating her own furniture collections to obviously with Randy and her and George Clooney with the liquor business, and that's why I wanted to get into the liquor business. Like, there were so many things where I watched, and actually when I created the NB furniture collection, Cindy Crawford came to Chicago and she launched it for me, which was amazing.
What is the secret to your success? Is it taking risks?
Yeah, I think it's taking risks, but also recognizing opportunity. I mean, I think opportunity knocks all the time. Oftentimes we just don't see it, or when we do, we go, "Wow, that was amazing," but we don't go any further with it. You know, you've got to be able to harness what's happening around you, because there is luck everywhere all the time, but luck can just come and go. You know, versus what have you done with it? How did you translate it? How did you act? And, you know, it hasn't always been fantastic. You know, you have things which don't work, you know, and obviously, you know, it's how you pick yourself up. You know, it's less about how you fall. You're going to fall. There are going to be ups and downs in life. That's a guarantee. But what do you do at the up? How did you get up? And I mean, what's next, you know?
I think your bull story is so metaphorical on so many different levels, on how you stuck it out, you got up, you know, and you wanted to capture that shot. It's risky, but you stuck for it.
We got the great shot out. We got the shot, basically. I mean, if you don't put yourself on the line, you may not get the shot. You might, but you might not. Sometimes you've got to take a bit of a risk. And, you know, Top Model, we did crazy things too, like photographing people on the top of the highest bungee jump tower in the world. I'm afraid of heights, but I still went up there, strapped myself in, got out there. I was literally terrified, but I was on top of the world. I climbed Sydney Harbour Bridge for another photo shoot where I was harnessed to the bridge, and my cameras, everything's harnessed to me. The models are standing on top of the bridge. The cars are going down between my legs, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm standing on a pylon on top of the highest bridge. What am I doing? You know, but those are kinds of things we would do on Top Model that would be extreme, and we would often get called out for it. But they do happen in the world of fashion. They just don't happen regularly, but we would make it fun and make sure that it always happened on Top Model.
Yeah, you broke that fourth wall and you let everyone in.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so alluring. Since I have the Nigel Barker, I've got some rapid fire questions
Go for
you.
it.
You ready?
Yeah.
If you could bring back one fashion trend from the 2000s, what would it be?
Oh, the 2000s. That's always an interesting kind of moment. But you know what happened in the 2000s? It was the end of androgyny and sort of heroin chic and grunge, and it was the dawn of really almost like the supermodel coming back. And some of you may remember people like Giselle, the supermodel, that she started that Brazilian moment in the early 2000s when all the gorgeous Brazilians was as if we'd never been to Brazil before, because out of nowhere Brazilian models were the thing. Well, that hairstyle that she had, that kind of in the wind Charlie's Angels kind of, slightly 70s kind of hair, I love that look. I think, obviously that was also low-rise jeans were also big then. So it's a combination of the low-rise jeans, which again is very Charlie's Angels, if you remember that show back in the day. But that feathered hair so that you look like you're walking through the wind at any given moment. Giselle, she rocked it, she brought it back, and she defined that moment for that.
So you mentioned jeans. Settle it once and for all. Are skinny jeans back?
They were never out of fashion for me.
Ooh, okay.
I love a skinny jean. I know the ladies don't like skinny jeans. They hug you, make you feel like claustrophobic, blah, blah, blah. I've heard it. I know. My wife doesn't like wearing them either. I like them. And so therefore, they're in fashion still.
Okay, you said it. What's one fashion trend today that gives you the ick?
Ugh. There's a lot of things that give me the ick. I'm a big shoe person.
Okay.
And, that being said, I think I bought probably more pairs of Christian Louboutin for my wife than anybody probably else. I mean, it doesn't help that the store is on the same street as the street I lived on in New York City. So I think I had like sort of special membership pass or there or whatever. They were literally they like knew my kids and everything, which is kind of scary. But I think their beautiful high heel is constructed in such an incredible way. It's so difficult to make. So therefore, I'm not a fan of things like should I say Uggs or Crocs or those sorts of like funny little
comfy
comfort shoes. My kids love them. I get it. People love them. Sticking things on your shoes.
They put on the clogs. They put little trinkets on it.
All the trinkets and everything else. I'm like, guys, really? Are we a smorgasbord now? I mean, these are our feet. These should be, where is the beautiful finessed shoe and heel? Please do not stick things. It looks like you've got gum stuck on your shoe.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Favorite fashion designer? I'm guessing it's not Uggs.
That's like asking who your favorite child is. Never a great idea, because you're going to please one and upset everybody else. But when I think back on the whole subject of fashion designers and everything else, it's funny. Back in the day, and this is probably mid-2000s, when I was, in the height of top model kind of fame, I was also asked to be sort of red carpet correspondence and what have you, and I actually worked for Fox. So I was the Fox red carpet correspondent for the Emmys in LA, and I used to, obviously comment on the dresses, the gowns, what everyone was wearing, what was hot, what was not, and I was asked to do a roundup at the end of the day, and I picked a designer who was brand new at the time called Pamela Rowland, and she had created the most beautiful gowns, and I've got to take my hat off to her, because her and I have been working together ever since. We became close friends, and she designs for women, and she obviously knows how to dress a woman and make them feel amazing, and her career has absolutely blown up over the past 20 years.
Because you kind of talked about it, and you got people to check her out.
Well, that kind of showcasing on television is very helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why sometimes, Oscars, Emmys, Grammys, Golden Globes, those kinds of moments, even though they're not really translatable to the average person as far as, I would wear that outfit, because you probably never would. There are moments where colors and silhouettes and certain elements, for example, like the use of sheer fabric, which is used a lot nowadays on the red carpet, and people are like, that's crazy. But then you see it translate down to the high street, where a lot of people are wearing, a lot of sheer clothing, or certain silhouettes, certain looks, certain colors, are showcased, as well as hair and makeup gets showcased on that red carpet. So it is a great sort of first moment for clothing are those big award shows. What
was your favorite look to photograph? Was it gowns?
I pretty much. I mean, I just love the silhouette of gowns. I mean, I've photographed everybody and everything, obviously, from nudes all the way to gowns. It's like part of what one does as a photographer, and there's something very freeing about the body. So when you do shoot nudes or swimwear, that's like, if someone has the courage to do that, what does that mean? Because there's no restriction with the fabric, or like, you can't shoot it from this side or that side. But when I'm shooting clothes, which I mostly do as a fashion photographer, therefore when I shoot gowns, I love the full work of all the embroidery, the beading, the tailoring, the pattern cutting, the craft, the woven materials, like all that goes into it. I find absolutely fascinating. So that for me is my favorite thing to shoot and photograph because of just the way it takes you. Like, it's like fantasy shooting a gown, you know, because it's not something that you can really wear very often. And when a woman wears a gown, she acts differently. You know, you can tell she's wearing a $10,000 gown. How amazing does that feel? You know, so everyone acts like a princess in them. Or
it elevates you, transforms you.
Transforms you.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Barker Company.
Absolutely.
What got you into the liquor business? Is this something you always wanted to do?
You know, it wasn't something I necessarily always wanted to do, but during the pandemic, I had created a podcast called The Shaken and Stirred Show because there wasn't much more for us to do other than have a drink at that time. And I thought, well, how about turn it into something? Because, you know, I was shooting my second season of Top Photographer and it got cancelled because of the pandemic, but I could do a podcast. And it was a great opportunity for us to chat, to talk, and to have a cocktail. And I kind of, especially for my female guests, became very aware that espresso martinis were incredibly popular, yet they were really hard to make. Bartenders and baristas and even mixologists who we had on the show always complained about the process of making them.
Yeah.
They were never consistent. They were very hard to make. And all the pre-made ones that we tried on the show were either too sweet, too bitter, no head. So we kind of went off and tried to make our own one. And my partner, Philippe Roderer, who was the guy who first brought Vive Clicquot to the United States, and he was the founder of Voss Water. Him and I got together. We thought it would take us 6 months. It took us 2 years to figure out the right recipe.
To perfect it.
So it's 100% Colombian espresso coffee.
Okay.
We use an Arabica bean. Coffee is incredibly important. We went through over 70 coffees to get here. A 6-time distilled vodka we do ourselves in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. And that as well, the 6-time distilled takes the edge off. So when you taste it and it's nice and balanced.
It's so balanced. And this one's the cappuccino.
That's the cappuccino,
so this one's
exactly.
new. Yeah.
That's brand new. That's made with a Wisconsin dairy and caramelized brown sugar. It's all natural.
It's so good.
And you just shake on ice and you go. So it's
not too sweet. It's not bitter. It's just like very well balanced. And I love how you've put so much thought into this too.
Thank you.
Espresso martinis. I mean, I feel like they've been having a moment. They've been having a resurgence, not just in America, but around the world.
It's a global phenomenon. You know, there's a reason why I'm involved with the most fashionable drink of our time. I mean, it all comes back to fashion at the end of the day.
Yes.
But, you know, the fun part of it is there's a great story about when the espresso martini was first created, which was in the sort of 90s, actually. And it was when apparently a supermodel, and some people say Naomi Campbell, and some people say somebody else, walked into a bar in London, Harry's apparently, and the bartender, Dick Bradsell, this is the legend, was the supermodel asked him to make her a drink that would wake her up and bleep her up, mess her up. and
that was this.
And so he was like, oh, wake you up? Okay, caffeine, I'll put some espresso, you know, mess you up, you use vodka. And then he put some simple syrup and some coffee liqueur, and the espresso martini was born. Now, you know, like I said, legends will have it. The Italians will tell you they made something similar years before, and it probably makes sense. But it's ironic because my career obviously has been with people like Tyra Banks and Naomi Campbell, who I created the show The Face with, and we did for several years on NBC.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, so there's always been this sort of provenance of fashion connecting things that I'm doing, and so the fact that it's also connected through, you know, the story of how this was first created, and also in England. So
it's like so full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah, yeah. So how many states are you in?
We're in 8 states right now. We'll be in 20 states by June, and we'll be all over the country, everywhere. If you go to barkermartinis.com, in fact, you can go to our store and you can buy it online, but you can also find where it is near you. Put in your zip code and you can see where it is. We're all over New York City. We're all over the tri-state area. We're about to launch in New Jersey as of literally next week.
You're taking over.
We are taking over.
Oh, world dominance.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right. Cheers. Nigel Barker, thank you so much for joining me. This was so much fun.
My pleasure.
And this is the first time I'm drinking on this show. So this is
there you go. Well, it's the first time for everything. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
5 o'clock somewhere. Nigel Barker, thank you. Cheers.